This is the most heavily guarded building on Earth. In nearly 90 years, it has never been robbed. No one has ever even tried. Behind a door that weighs more than 20 tons, a door whose full combination no single living person is allowed to know, sit 4,500 tons of solid gold. At today's prices, more than $600 billion. Now, for the strange part, much of that gold was handed over by ordinary Americans in the year when owning it became a crime, punishable by 10 years in prison. For a while, this same building also hid the Constitution of the United States, the Magna Carta, and the crown of a 1,000-year-old kingdom. And yet, in almost a century, the outside world has been allowed to look inside exactly twice. There has been no true, independent count of the gold in more than 65 years, which is why the rumors refuse to die, that the bars are fake, that the vault was quietly emptied decades ago. Presidents promised to open it, then went silent. But in June of 2026, Congress finally gave the order, open the vault and count every single bar. This is the story of Fort Knox, and of the question it was built to silence. Is the gold really there? To answer that question, you have to start with a crime, the crime of owning gold. 1933. America is on its knees, banks are collapsing by the thousands, and frightened people are pulling out their savings in gold and hiding it under floorboards. So the new president makes a move no one saw coming. By executive order, he commands every citizen to surrender their gold to the government. Coins, bars, certificates, at the official price of $20.67 an ounce. Refuse, and the punishment is up to $10,000 in fines, a fortune at the time, or 10 years behind bars. Americans line up and hand it in. And then comes the twist. Months later, the government simply changes the price of gold to $35 an ounce. The state's brand new hoard is instantly worth almost 70% more. It has been called the greatest wealth transfer nobody ever voted on. And it left Washington with a problem no government had ever had. Where on earth do you put it all? The answer rose out of a muddy field in Kentucky in 1936, deliberately deep inland, beyond the range of any carrier-launched bomber. Granite walls, bomb-proof roof, a vault wrapped in steel plates and concrete, inside a building that cost barely $500,000, guarding a treasure worth billions. In January of 1937, the gold began to arrive, on trains, in sealed cars, watched by soldiers, machine guns and armored vehicles, hundreds of rail cars over 6 months, moving half of America's gold into a single room. The main door, more than 20 tons of blast-proof steel. The combination was split into pieces, each known by a different member of staff, so that no human being on the planet could open that vault alone. Next door, an entire army base, tanks, artillery, attack helicopters, and from day one, a single iron rule. No visitors, not senators, not tourists, not cameras, nobody. Yet within a few years, that vault was guarding things even more precious than gold. December 1941. America is suddenly at war, and its capital city feels terrifyingly exposed. So the country's most sacred possessions travel south in secret. The original Constitution of the United States and the Declaration of Independence, sealed in protective containers and locked inside Fort Knox. They are joined by one of Britain's original copies of the Magna Carta, the 800-year-old Charter of Liberty, stranded in America by the war, and later by something even stranger, the Crown of St. Stephen, the 1,000-year-old Crown of Hungary, spirited away from the advancing Soviet army and quietly deposited in Kentucky, where it would remain for over 30 years. For a moment in the 1940s, this anonymous concrete box may have been the most valuable single room on the planet. Then, one by one, the treasures went home, the gold stayed, and around it, the silence thickened, until the world began to fill that silence with questions. 1964, a film called Goldfinger imagines a raid on Fort Knox and gives the world its only picture of the inside. a movie set, invented in a London studio because no camera had ever been allowed in. Then, 1971, President Nixon cuts the final link between the dollar and gold. From that day on, officially the gold backs nothing at all, which raised an uncomfortable question. If the gold no longer matters, why is it still guarded like the crown jewels? Unless, whispered a growing chorus, there is nothing left to guard. In 1974, a Washington lawyer went on the radio and said it out loud: "The vault is empty, the gold secretly sold and shipped abroad." The story spread until the Treasury cracked. That September, for one single morning, 100 congressmen and journalists were marched through the door. Flashbulbs lit up walls of gold, stacked floor to ceiling. The headlines wrote themselves: "The gold is there, 1 room, 1 hour, once." And for the press, that glimpse, half a century ago, is still the last one. Officially, the matter was settled in the years that followed. Government committees counted the compartments, one batch at a time, and placed official seals on the doors. By the mid-1980s, they declared nearly all of it verified. But look closer, and the reassurance gets thinner. The counting was done by the government, on the government. Most compartments were never melted down and assayed with modern methods. The seals were simply trusted year after year. On the books, the gold is still valued at $42.22 an ounce, a price frozen in 1973, as if half a century simply never happened. Meanwhile, stories of tungsten-filled counterfeit bars surfacing elsewhere in the world kept the old rumor alive. In 2017, the Treasury Secretary was granted a rare look inside and joked that the gold was safe. The second outside visit in the vault's entire history. A few officials, for a few minutes. Reassuring. But a photo opportunity is not an audit, and the question kept compounding like unpaid interest until a president picked it up. February 2025. The President of the United States announces on camera that he is going to Fort Knox, quote, "to make sure the gold is still there." The world's richest man amplifies it to hundreds of millions, floating a live-streamed inspection. The Treasury Secretary calmly insists that all the gold is present and accounted for. And then, nothing. The visit never happens. The talk simply stops, which, to the doubters, sounded louder than any denial. But the idea had escaped. That June, Kentucky's own congressman introduced the Gold Reserve Transparency Act. Not a tour, not a photo op, a full, independent audit. Every vault, every bar, weighed, tested, assayed by outside auditors, and then re-audited every 5 years, forever. In June of 2026, Congress passed it. The first true accounting of America's gold in more than 65 years. A process expected to take up to 2 years. Somewhere in Kentucky, in a room almost no one alive has seen, the counting has begun. Which brings us back to the question from the beginning. Is the gold really there? Here is the deeper answer. Since 1971, the dollar has been backed by nothing but belief. The gold in Fort Knox hasn't been money for over 50 years. If every bar is exactly where it should be, not one thing about your bank account changes. And yet the audit matters enormously, because Fort Knox no longer guards America's money. It guards America's word. If the auditors walk out and confirm every ounce, the system proves it can tell the truth about itself, and the vault returns to its silence with its legend intact. If anything at all is missing, the damage won't be measured in dollars. It will be measured in trust, the only currency that has ever truly mattered. In 1933, a government demanded its citizens' gold on faith. 90 years later, the citizens finally demanded to see it. That is the real story of Fort Knox. Money is a story we agree to believe. And every story, sooner or later, gets audited.